enterprise data complexity and enabling the connected worker. This is today's topic. And to discuss it, we are joined by two experts from our business consultant team, Marteen Leegwater and Denis Asselman. We will also have the chance to welcome Marteen Leegwater, Solution Director of Digitalization at Elopak, who will share his experience about enhancing the connected worker experience. Marteen, over to you.
Okay. Hi, everybody, and good morning. So today, just a brief run on the agenda. We'll sort of introduce, for those of you who are not aware, who GE Vernova are, and then we'll talk about a connected worker, so what it means to be a connected worker, and then move on to helping you understand how having the right data there together will enable the connected worker to operate a lot more efficiently. And then, as Magali said, we'll walk you through a customer story with Marteen, Digital Transformation Director from Elopak, to talk you through some insights of where that particular setup has actually helped them go forward. And then we'll leave it open for Q&A. So I'll just briefly hand over to Denis now to walk you through GE Vernova and who we are.
All right, thank you, Marteen, and good morning, everybody. I hope you have your coffee next to you like me. So talking about GE Vernova, if you're not familiar with us, and more in particular with our Proficy software suite, what is this all about? Technically, it's a suite which is used by more than 20,000 customers in the world. And if you think about the connected workers, that means like over 50,000 users on a daily basis working in the MES space or in the HMI SCADA space, automation space, leveraging our software suite. That means thousands of installations globally, of course. And if you reason a bit further of that, that means also that through our partners or channel network directly with us, we are available to you. Another aspect about our suite is definitely that we work around innovation. And especially if you think about products like, for example, Proficy Data Hub, where we'll also deep dive a bit further in today. But if you think overall data connectivity through our Historian and HMI products, that's where we will look into together today on how do we bring that data towards the connected worker. Next slide, please. So let's look back to that Proficy software suite. What is it doing from, let me say, low down to the connectivity where we have the machines up into the sky? So starting with the control layer, we have our industrial gateway server, really talking the machine protocols and making sure that connectivity to the devices is possible, but also the first layer of standardization of the data. And that's what it is really all about when you think about the connected worker, because access to data, connectivity to equipment and machine, that's really the fundament. The next part is, of course, like how do you structure that data, linking back also to what we do with Proficy Data Hub. And also how that structure is further enabling users to really get access to data and insights. So once we have that connectivity in place, we can also historize data in a smart way. That's where our Proficy Historian centrally, I would say, in the diagram is coming to the front. And that is nothing else as doing historization in a smart way, but also making that data immediately available, like for example, operator trending. What if you need a historic view or an ad hoc view on the data that you're interested in, and bring that back with a smart model to the fingertips of the users. When you think about further context, because it's not only about time series data and visualization of temperatures and other types of trends, it's also about the context of manufacturing. And that is where our smart factory MES is playing a role, where you have standard widgets which are bringing that information to the operator. That includes also, like, for example, the access to the production plan. That is where our Proficy scheduler is playing the role. Thinking further, and what you see consistently across the whole suite is that in terms of visualization, and Marteen is going to deep dive a bit further on, also in, let me say, visualization templates, for example, that is where our operations hub single pane of glass is taking its responsibility. Because across this whole suite, we use the same visualization layer, and that is, I think, key. Finally, when we talk also about insights, we also talk about insights through analytics. That might be like analytics on recognizing patterns, early warnings on vibration, you name it, but also about sustainability insight. So overall, all the data in a single Proficy software suite, but bringing those perspectives to the connected worker. Next slide, please.
Okay. So what it means to be connected. So when we're talking about a connected worker, that can mean different things to different people. But essentially, it can be described in sort of different parts and different ways. But really, a connected worker at its very core is basically someone who has access to pretty much all the data at their fingertips, wherever they are geospatially located, to ensure that they can make the right decisions at the right time with all the information available. And really, the goal here is to sort of maximize industrial workers' productivity. So it's really about how do we present information, how do we make it accessible so that these types of personnel can perform their tasks really, really efficiently, and they can perform it safely, and then they can perform it in a way that's suited to driving that higher productivity. And this is really important, especially today when we've got challenges with an aging workforce, sometimes even less workforce that's entering manufacturing, and those numbers and resources of people that are around getting slimmer and slimmer on the shop floor for different operations. It's really, really important, and it's a great challenge to try and make sure that we're presenting information to enable them to do their jobs in the most efficient manner. And really, again, that will then have an impact on things like safety. That might have an impact on the final quality of the product that you're producing. But really, what we're after is trying to make sure information is there so workers can be can have high levels of productivity. And that's really what this concept is driving towards. And as you kind of start to think about, what are the key pillars, I guess, of being a connected worker, one of the first ones is connectivity. And it's not just connectivity to the control systems, but it can also be connectivity in between people, so not just data sources either. And it could be for an industrial worker, it could be connectivity then into also enterprise systems. So they've got all the data available, and later on I'll talk a little bit about how Proficy data can help there. But what they need is connectivity to enable information to flow correctly to enable them to do their job. So one thing could be connectivity into a maintenance system or an EAM system where the worker needs to understand how do they log a case, or if there is, how do they even log a ticket for preventative maintenance, for example. So that's really, really important. And the other pillar is collaboration. So how does that particular worker kind of get more help in doing their task? Is there ready to no help available? Are there any analytics that are running, advisories that they need to be aware of, and really just guiding the operator in terms of what they need to do? Or is there somewhere that they can go to log actions that may have been taken by another operator on a different shift, for example? So in a way, they also need to be learning from what other people are doing on the plant floor. So that's really, really important. But a lot of this is useless without context. So that's another key pillar. So when we deliver information, it has to be within the context of what the information is telling the operator. And this has become more important as that data and the sources of data that they have access to is getting wider and wider. So the variety of data has become a lot wider and more extensive. So the context is really, really important. And the last one is accessibility. So how can they access that data, firstly in a secure way, but also in a way that's really, really intuitive? So are they going to be viewing that data on a tablet, a device, and also are they remote? And if they are remote, how can we secure that connection to them as well? Again, just thinking through things like cybersecurity and the form factor on which they're going to receive that information. So really, the goal is really trying to make the worker, wherever they are, more productive and more connected to the plant. And a lot of this starts with data, right? Data is the foundation for any digital transformation initiative, and that's true even for connected workers. We all talk about data a lot, but as I mentioned before, data is nothing really without context. And this is just an example of what context can mean for data. And we've started to work around this concept called Data Hub, which really consolidates not just the data and storing the data, but any data that may be required for consumption. So it could be transactional data, it could be data coming in from maintenance systems, it could be data coming in from GIS systems. So from all of these systems, all of that data consolidated together to provide a context for the operator to take action in based on what the information says. So again, it could be an action to be taken based on analytics that could be running on top of this large amount of consolidated data, or it could be just a common context for attaching a specialized solution that may be needed in that particular operation on the plant floor to perform some additional tasks that an operator has to do because the manufacturing process has suddenly shifted or changed. So getting this context in the information and that common form makes it much easier for operators to work with and adapt as well. And really that's where the concept of Data Hub really helps. So it's really important to enable a connected worker to make sure that they've got the right data and not just data in a static form, living, breathing data. And that's really where Proficy Data Hub comes in. So this is something that will be released in 2026. And really the goal is for aiming to provide the end customer faster time to value and quicker decision making. And some of the ways we're looking to do that are through things like model templates, unified namespace, and even MCP. So really, a lot of those components are crucial in helping us achieve this. And it takes the form of models, which can come from different parts of the organization, and all the data points, for example, and it really applies to them sort of a dictionary in this way so that everyone knows where some of those pieces of data came from. So, imagine for a historian sitting in two different factories, so one historian in one factory, one historian in another factory, they could have exactly the same points represented in the historian, but in each factory they could be named completely different. And the idea here is that we may not know that they're the same, but with something like the unified namespace, there's an intelligence there to understand that those data points are indeed the same. So when you're starting to think about that particular data point, it could represent a coordinate on a weld robot in each factory. With the unified namespace, you know that you're actually synchronizing those data points. You know that they're the same point, which makes it really easy once they're synchronized to know that if you're going to layer a solution on top of that, so be it visualization, you've got the same data there. So there's an intelligence behind there where you're not at that point going site by site. So when it comes to building out a model, a model could be for an entire organization, could be done from the enterprise down. So, an organization might want to push a model from a centralized location down to the factory floor. So that's something that we could do. Or if organizations are very decentralized with lots of different acquisition sites, they could start on the factory floor and work their way up. So each one could build their own model, but they're being pushed to a central repository. And that really is starting to build an enterprise layer of data that you can really work with, and then start to mine and then start to take action on, not just site by site, but across an organization. So, one of the important things is having this hierarchical model, which works well in applications where data is potentially siloed, for example. So you then be able to categorize and have data flow from different sources in a structured way, like you see here, and then data could then be pushed out for visualization or for analytics. And the cool part here is that the models are really extensible. So as far as you need to go, you can add as many attributes as you want. And of course, from the data perspective, everyone will know it's there, right? They'll no longer have to sort or filter through or really do a lot of hard work to understand where the data is or what it's telling them. And once these models are built, they're reusable. So we'll store them in a location within the data hub where you're able to use them to add additional plants. So if a customer is building a plant going from 1 to 2 or from 2 to 3, you could take this model and then apply it to the new plant. So you won't have to spend weeks and weeks doing setup, which really speeds up delivery of projects as well. And then we have AI-driven reasoning, so embedded within the platform. And this is where the MCP, which is the model context protocol, comes in, and that really provides a standard and easy way for applications to work with data. So it makes it really simple. For those who are unaware, the MCP is the server itself is quite a new architecture based on a protocol that was invented by Anthropic, and essentially, traditionally in the last few years, the way we've sort of interacted with things like large language models have been, you ask a large language model a prompt and it will come back with an answer, or it will draft you an email. The bit that's missing is that you have to then copy and paste, for example, that email out, for it then to be sent in your own Gmail or your own Microsoft server, whatever it is. That's where the concepts of sort of agents come into. Agents actually then perform actions on what you've got back from an LLM, for example. But if you imagine you've got lots and lots of different actions taking place, and some of those actions connecting to APIs, let's say one with Salesforce, let's say one with Zapier, whatever it is, there's a lot of orchestration going on. The MCP model is sort of an architecture and a protocol that sits right in the middle to bring some standardization across all those different actions that you might be taking as a result of talking to an LLM. So it's new, and it's something that we're embedding within Proficy Data Hub. And what it means is that instead of having to do all the mapping individually for all these data sources and training lots of individual models, using the MCP server and protocol, we're essentially streamlining the way we'll be able to trigger actions based on the output of a prompt, for example. So you can receive instant personalized messages and actions based on reasoning. And from a customer perspective, they don't really know that they're using MCP within Data Hub. They just get the results where you're able to ask a question. So the Data Hub is able to go in, pull the data from different places, categorize it, and then start to make decisions, or to show you what's going on in a really sort of easy way. So you can then start to make decisions autonomously, really. So the operator really has all that information at their fingertips. So where this can come into play, for example, is somewhere like here. You know, you pull your data in from your sources. So it could be SCADA, for example. You bring it into the Data Hub. The Data Hub has, again, that intelligence built into it, where it will say, right, I want to then go and connect with my CMMS system or my EAM system, for example, where a maintenance worker needs to go and perform an action. So the operator might ask a prompt of Data Hub, for example, send a prompt to Data Hub. It might come back and say, right, you need to take these actions. There's also some alerts that could constantly be being made. So the EAM is then at that point where, you know, a work order needs to be sent to it, and there could be a visualization layer on top. So the output of the Data Hub will be a linking with something like Operations Hub, which is a visualization layer, and the CMMS, and receiving alerts. So, you know, for example, you could imagine there's an operator who's looking at a plant and he's doing maintenance, and he's saying, you know, show me all the pumps that are alarmed, right? So this is conceptual, right? This is a conceptual layer of, hey, asking something to data, for example, across data that you're collecting, and having a layer of visualization, you know, on top of that. And here we can see that we've got 4 different pumps. They've all got a frequency, a speed, a flow, and you can see that it's flagged 2 of those pumps are alarmed. You can then go and ask, an operator can then go and ask something a little bit further. Okay, so which of these pumps have not been maintained in the last 1 year? So again, you're fast forwarding a little bit to those 2 individual pumps, and you can see, right, well, one of the pumps was last serviced 238 hours ago. The other pump was serviced 1,834 hours ago. Again, and that's the one that stopped. So you're getting data in a really fast and intuitive way. And you can imagine, if you're a connected worker looking at this on a tablet while you're out, you know, somewhere remotely, for example, whether you're in the mining field, whether you're in the water industry, this is really, really crucial information, and it's taking the connected worker to the next level via something like Proficy Data Hub. So it's not just about sort of static visualizations on data that you've already got. You're really starting to leverage the power of analytics in the background to try to develop visualizations like this, for example. So again, these are just examples and templates of the types of things that you could potentially build, leveraging Data Hub as your core enterprise data source. And I'll hand over to Dennis now to walk you through Operations Hub and visualization.
Okay, thank you, Marteen. So I think it was clear. We saw actually the way of coming to unified namespace, actually a template, structuring that data. And once the data is available and we can query that data, also the visualization aspect came back to the front. We have just seen it in the example. That is also why, if you look to our visualization capabilities with Proficy Operations Hub, 3 main chapters come back to the front. I mean, one is about improving the situational awareness. If you think, for example, on SCADA HMI representations from the past, where you build objects, classes, I would say, and put, let me say, a visualization combined with it, you see the continuity in Operations Hub with also, let me say, making these web-based visualizations available, think about now bundling that back also with the data models that are provisioning the data that you would need on the fly. Then if you think about time to solution, and we will see that in the example also when we talk in a moment together with Marteen from Elopak. I mean, decreasing time to solution, the way how to build these things, I would say, and also enabling collaboration. I mean, like being able to reuse certain models, reuse certain objects you have created, or even the apps where you use them like today in Proficy Operations Hub. That is where that productivity is coming from. And that intuitiveness is really the driver, I would say, to the next level of what the connected worker needs. If you also think about the aspect about, let me say, achieving visualization anytime, anywhere, that means it didn't stop with like remote desktop like in the past, or let me say a conversion of to web interface. It's now about fully web. It's now about enabling that on your tablet, have a responsive design. Think about the changes we did in Operations Hub to also work with the grid, the containers, the flex zones, and so on. So that's where you see definitely the evolution. Next step. So one thing that we should not forget is also that it's not only about visualization. This visualization also comes in a broader context, in the context of operators need to do work. Operators need to follow certain step or task. Think about, for example, what if the process changed, and according to our quality standard, that means that X number of tasks needs to be performed. Also for those tasks, we saw it already with the maintenance, for example, example that Marteen gave, that we need additional context from other systems to perform this task, to be informed on what is the situational context we are working in. That's, I mean, another way of looking on where the connected worker is leveraging that data in, for example, step-by-step task execution. Next slide, please. If we think further about it, it also comes like, how do we have an overall quality improvement program inside of the company? How do we do, for example, risk assessment? It might be that we have a structural agenda, which is telling us like every day, every shift, for example, you need to check the quality of the label. You need to check whether the standard UDI information is there. And that is, again, another source where Data Hub and this whole data context is going to be leveraged to perform similar tasks like this. Next slide, please. Wrapping it up is that if you have then this task performed and you need additional actions, you need additional things to happen, these are again triggers in that platform where you give a signal to the outside world, which could be a CMMS system, but it's also like internally actions which also require another context to be informative for the person who received the task to be performed. So if you find a downtime and that is requiring a maintenance intervention, you want to have that information bundled right away. So it's another way of thinking, if you think about work process management, that also there the connected worker wants to have access to that data. Now, there is no better way, next slide please, to look into that than actually listening to what the customer is doing. And we invited here Marteen from Elopak, who is doing nothing else on a daily basis working around digital transformation. So Marteen, can you please quickly introduce yourself to the audience and tell us something quickly about Elopak?
Yes, good morning all. So very happy to share our experience on how we have digitally connected our workers using the capabilities of Operations Hub and the rest of the MES solution. I'm Director Digitalization within Elopak. We are a food company, a packaging company known for the milk cartons and the juice cartons. We're mainly active in Europe and North America. And over the last 5 years, we have been implementing a manufacturing execution system in our plants in Elopak. And then, of course, Operations Hub is the digital front end of that solution.
Okay, great. So Marteen, what is clearly about the use case about Elopak is, of course, the scale. And I mean, if we go to the next slide, we're showing actually some examples of the solution, I would say. What are for you the key drivers when you look in terms of implementation around product, people, and process? Can you tell us something about that, on what the impact was for those 3 pillars for the connected worker?
Yes, maybe to bring a bit of focus, the screens you see here is our series of real-time dashboards. Next to these dashboards that bring the real-time insight, we also have a series of applications, apps, built in the same technology where the operators are doing all the registration. So they have their overview of orders they need to execute during this shift. They need to scan in the material which needs to be consumed. They can follow up on the automatic generated production. They report their downtime, their waste, etc. So that's all the data collection part. But next to that, we've developed a series of persona-based real-time dashboards, mainly focusing on the efficiency KPIs and to gain logistic insights in our plants, machine statuses, stock statuses. And our goal is to make the right information available for that specific role at their fingertips. And with that real-time fact-based insights, we enable faster decision-making and execution of the required actions. So that has been really the focus of these dashboards. So for example, the operational teams like the operators, the shift leads, the supervisors, they have detailed KPI monitors for the current shift or the previous shift, the previous days, to see if there are any recurring issues. The team leaders, shift supervisors, operations managers, they have a bit more high-level KPIs for the department or the full plant, but they can drill into the needed details to understand where we have the issues. Also supporting roles like lab engineers to be able to follow up on process stability and notice where maybe production process needs some attention. Logistic operators to know where material needs to be prepared, keep track of progress, understands which machine needs priority. And I think the main success factors have been, one element is the product, which comes with nice and powerful features with every new version. The gentle learning curve, so it is very easy to build a prototype, to enhance it while being operational and already prove value to the business, and then scale it out to multiple machines or plants. So this supports our try fast, fail fast, learn fast innovation strategy, you could say.
Okay.
And next to the product, I think that also enables the people side, where business users are actually joining our application development team in creating the dashboards they need. So the business users are in the lead. We have created super user groups over the various plants for developing standardized solutions, maybe piloting in one plant and when successful, rolling out to the other plants. So the ownership is then with the business. The support is with the application development team. So we make sure the underlying data structures are secured and the performance is guaranteed. And then the solutions becoming a standard, and the standards are being rolled out over the plants. So that has been key to how we have implemented this.
Okay, no, great insights. What I hear is technically innovation is key in terms of the product. When it comes to people, giving them the tools that they can work on that prototype, as you said, but see also, let me say, bringing faster value to the shop floor is another key. And definitely also the scale. I mean, it's a standard that you can roll out over all the different Elopak sites. So thank you very much, Marteen, for your presence today and giving us those insights. So Magali, let's open it up for questions.
Yes. So first question, what is important point to access data whenever required without any delay? Sorry.
So I think one of the elements is making sure that there's a good scalable architecture in place, right? So if you're using Data Hub and you're using Historian on the cloud, for example, you know, the notion of being able to have that sort of containerized really helps in terms of availability. And again, naturally, you'll have speed enabled within there as well. So, you know, really moving away from typically what you do with a SQL database on premise. The underlying architecture will really enable speed of read and write.
Okay, another question. In addition to the software tool described, what devices or other integration elements are needed for the solution to function correctly? Do we have a solution for integrity legacy assets? And regarding the one team concept, are there synergies with other GE Vernova businesses, such as grid automation or the AAA platform? I want to thank you for the event also.
I think that's
yeah,
great. Do you want to take it, Marteen, or shall I go?
If you've got something in mind, yeah, go.
Okay. Anyway, I think indeed the access to, let me say, also different protocols is indeed key. If you think more in the automation substation power space, you find often protocols like 61850 and so on, which are particular drivers, particular standards that bring the data. Of course, that is where you think like we had our industrial gateway server that we showed, for example, in the portfolio. Those talk natively, those protocols. Even as GE Vernova, we have our own specific drivers that talk those protocols. So indeed, there is a standardization required back to the fundament, in my opinion. While you see that natively, if you look to our SCADA HMIs, if you look to our other component in the portfolio, think also about Data Hub and so on. I mean, Operations Hub, they natively talk already standards like OPCOA, MQTT, and so on. If you then need additional protocols, indeed you will need some other capabilities, modules outside of the portfolio to, let me say, make that access to data available. So fair question, I would say. But once that data is, I would say, in the standard protocols available, that's where actually the other layers take control and work, as Marteen said, towards those templates. And further on, let me say, the visualizations that come together with it.
And also referring to to Grid, this is a separate product to Grid, but what I would say is that although this is a data platform that we use and we sell from the manufacturing perspective, there is a lot of open standardization. So for example, through Data Hub, we're pervasively using MQTT and Kafka. That's really how data is flowing around there. We know that Grid are doing something similar where they will expose data in a similar sort of way. So even though they're treated as two different solutions, both really standardize on sort of open protocols, so data can be shared pretty easily between both.
Okay.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much all for your participation, and thank you very much, Marteen and Denis, for this presentation. As said, this has been a very interesting event, and obviously to Marteen, as it's always extremely insightful to hear from peer what you are doing in the industry. So thank you, and hopefully we see you in the next Coffee with an Expert. It will be on delighting our customers. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.